Can you hear me? All right, guys. Well, hey, that was a lot of fun out there. 9 square was good. We played the little Gaga to kick it off. That was fun. I won one of the rounds, so that was awesome. Who won the second round of Gaga? Sweet. All right, leaders rule, students drool. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So I just want to give you a few quick announcements. As you know, this week we're hanging out. It was really awesome. Next week we're off because it's Mother's Day. So don't forget, next week's Mother's Day. So do something special for your mom. Tell her how much you love her, how great she is. But then the week after is our last youth group, and then we're taking a 2-week break. So we have our year-end party. We're going to have 9 square, some outdoor games, and some more. It's going to be a lot of fun. We might play a big group game out in the field. But that's going to be our last youth group for the spring, and we're going to have an extended small group time as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And then we're going to take 2 quick weeks off, but we'll be back for June 6th. As you see here, we have our Mestival event. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to do some slip and slide kickball, but with slime. It's going to be really cool. We're going to do some messy games. We're going to give away a few free tickets for our tubing day, which will be really fun. So it's definitely something we want to invite your friends to. We're not going to have small group or lesson. We're just going to have a lot of fun. So it's a great time to invite your friends. It's going to be really, really awesome. So 6:30 to 8:30. We're going to go back to our normal time for youth group as well, since now we can play games and we're able to do some fun stuff. So it's going to be really, really exciting. Afterwards, Carter is going to be leading a Bible study for 2 weeks. So you can see here, June 13th and 27th. We're going to have a Bible study here. We're going to be talking about how to develop faith habits, how to grow closer in your relationship with God this summer. Even though we're not meeting every week, you can still grow in your relationship with God, and we're going to show you how to do that. So it's going to be really fun, really relational, and really awesome. Great. All right, so what we're going to do real quick is we're going to play a quick video. I'm going to jump up for our message. No, don't play that. Is there anyone new here today? Is there any new people here today? I don't think so. All right, cool. Let's watch this quick video. So today we're going to be finishing our Vibe series. Do you guys remember that one day? It was probably about a month ago. It was a really hot day in the middle of the winter. Do you guys remember that? It was like 80-some degrees. It was really an awesome day. And at the beginning of the pandemic, me and Joanna didn't know what to do. So we got this really cool inflatable boat, as you can see here. It was a lot of fun. I know it looks funny. It looks like a dinghy. It basically is a big dinghy. But it's really cheap. We got it. It has an electric motor on it. It's a lot of fun. So on this really nice 80-degree day, I decided, let me break the boat out and go boating. It's going to be a lot of fun. So the only problem, though, with going boating in this day was it was super windy, like 30 miles per hour windy. And I was like, you know what? I think I should go. So I asked Joanna, my wife, I said, hey, do you want to go with me on a boat ride? And what did she say? No way! It's too windy. Why would you go on a boat that windy weather? I was like, it's fine. I'm just going to go. So I ignore her. I pack up the boat, and I go myself. I set everything up. That's actually this picture here. I'm ready to go. And I notice there's not one person in the water. I'm like, that's kind of weird. But I'm like, all right, I already set this all up. It takes like a half an hour setup. I'm going to go in the water. I don't really care. So I jump in the water. I go across the lake, and that's where I took this picture. Now, this lake isn't really fast moving, so there usually isn't any waves. But you can see here, it's pretty turbulent because of, all the wind going by. So I take a picture. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go back now. So I take my boat. I start going back, and all of a sudden, big gusts of wind start blowing in like, and all of a sudden, these waves get bigger and bigger. So when your boat hits a wave, it goes up further and further. So all of a sudden, before I could realize it, these big gusts of winds were picking my boat up out of the water and leaning me back. Like I'm almost like doing a wheelie on a bicycle. I was so scared. I was like, I'm going to flip over and I'm going to drown in the middle of this water. This water was frozen the week before. It was like 30 degrees. You're supposed to wear like a life jacket and stuff. No one would have known I would have drowned in there because there was no one out there. I started freaking out. Before I could freak out, I got this brand new hat Joanna got me for Christmas, and it blew off right in the water and was gone. Totally lost. I couldn't believe it. So I tried to turn my boat around. I go really, really slow, and I somehow get back to shore, and there was a guy like watching me there, laughing at me because he realized how stupid I was. Because it's an inflatable boat. Why would you go in an inflatable boat when there's a lot of wind and a lot of air? For a normal boat, it would have been okay. Well, I was wrong. My wife was right. I should have listened to her. And she did tell me that when I got home. But I was pretty scared. It was a scary moment. I thought, man, I might flip this boat in the water. Now, this week, we're going to be talking about a vibe I think that can control us all. And that vibe is fear. We've all experienced it in some way or another. Maybe for you, fear has kept you from trying new things. Maybe you're like, I'm not going to be good enough. I can't try that. Or maybe fear has kept you or hurt your friendships. The fear of rejection or the fear of telling someone the truth. Or maybe fear has created a script in your mind that maybe you're not all that you say you are. Or maybe you're different than who you truly are. I want you to take this seriously. I want you to think about the last thing you were really stressed about or you were really afraid about. How much time did you spend stressing about that thing? How much time did you spend thinking about it? Maybe it was that midterm or that test. Maybe it was, are you going to be accepted into this next school? Maybe it was, is she or he going to like me back? When was that? How much time did you spend thinking about that? If you're anything like me, you spent the whole day thinking about it. You tried to figure out in your head, how is this going to play out? What's the scenarios going to look like? What am I going to say? What am I going to do? That's what happens when our fear vibe takes over. It starts to control your life. Our world gets really small, and fear gets really big. It starts to take over. But here's the really good news I have today. Jesus has a lot to say about fear. The Bible has a lot to say about fear. Fear does not have to take over our lives. But the problem is this. Does anyone here ever read Bible verses and you kind of read them just by themselves? You're like, oh, this is a really good verse, but you read it by itself. So maybe it doesn't have as much impact as it could. For example, Jesus says, fear not. Basically meaning you don't have to be scared of things. But that doesn't really help you right now, does it? It doesn't feel like, man, how does that really help me in my life? So today we're going to be talking about a few passages in the Bible where it talks about fear, but we're going to give greater context to why it matters and how it can help you in your life. And I believe it will. Because, see, Jesus had these 12 guys. They were named what? Can someone tell me? The 12 what? Disciples. All right, right? 12 disciples. So basically, Jesus was their teacher. He was their disciples. Basically, they were really good friends. Like, they were your best buds. Think about the people. Look to the person next to you and say, I'm so glad you're my friend. Just tell them, I'm so glad you're my friend. Right? Those are your, like, really good friends, hopefully. If you don't have anyone like Laura, it's okay. There's someone around here for you. But the people you're really close with, that's how Jesus was. They were like bros. You know, there were people who were really close to each other. So Jesus tells this to his very, very best friends. He says, I'm going to send you out like sheep among the wolves. What? Is that what you tell your best friends? Think about it. Wolves are the predators and sheep are the prey. So Jesus is like, I'm going to send you guys out. You're going to be like the sheep, and you're going to be running around with all of these predators, all these people trying to get you. That's not very encouraging. And then he goes more literal and says that these people, his disciples, would be beaten and arrested. And to wrap it all up, he tells them, don't be afraid. Don't worry, it's not that big of a deal. And we tend to read this story and stop right there. We don't really look further into it. But if you look in the context of this story, it's a bigger story. It's like we read just in the middle of the story. We got to see the beginning of the story. Because before this, Jesus takes his disciples out on a field trip. Who here likes to go on field trips? Really? Not many people like field trips? What's your favorite field trip? Any? Aquarium? All right, yeah. What kind of aquarium? The one in Philly. It's kind of a stupid question. Like, the aquarium, the one with the fishes, right? I mean, that was kind of a dumb question. So, yeah, right? We all like to go on field trips. Now, I don't know if you'd like to go on this field trip. Jesus' disciples went on this field trip, and they were in the middle of a boat in the Sea of Galilee, okay? So imagine Jesus' 12 disciples and him on the middle of a boat in the Sea of Galilee. And one of Jesus' closest disciples said this: "Suddenly a furious storm came up the lake so that the waves swept over the boat." Whoa. Can you imagine? Jesus and his disciples were on the small boat in the middle of this great water, and without a warning, a storm showed up. Think about the noise from the wind and the waves. Think about it, right? Think about the setting they were in on this little tiny boat, and they're just rocking back and forth. Can you imagine that? I know the sound might have startled you a little bit, but could you picture yourself in that moment? I was panicking when there was no wind or wave, like it was just little baby stuff. These disciples were in a big situation. What was Jesus doing? He was sleeping. Think of all that noise, all that rocking, and Jesus was sleeping there. Can you imagine that? If you were Jesus' disciple, you would be scared out of your mind. You would be like, what is going on right now? And their fearless leader was sleeping through it all. So naturally, what would you do if Jesus was sleeping and you felt like you were going to drown? You'd wake the guy up. You'd be like, Jesus, hey, hello. So this is what they say. They said to Jesus, Lord, save us. We're going to drown. Like they're panicking. They were frustrated. They felt alone. And most of all, the disciples were scared. They thought, hey, we might die here. And they wanted their leader to come help them. So how does Jesus respond to his disciples? In the nicest way possible. He says, you of little faith, why are you so afraid? Isn't that crazy? I can only imagine the disciples standing there. They're soaking wet. They're wobbling on a boat. They see the sea, and they're like, what are you talking about, right? But Jesus wasn't paying attention to what was in front of them or what was around them. Jesus was trying to tell his disciples something really important that I think can help you too. He was teaching them about fear. So he gets up. Jesus doesn't panic. He doesn't fret. And he uses that to make a point, because no matter how scary the circumstances, Jesus is calm. He's not worried. He's not running around. Then Matthew says Jesus spoke to the winds and the waves, and they calmed down. Like the disciples were totally amazed. They responded by saying this, what kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him. Like, could you imagine that? They just saw, this was unbelievable. Like, he gets up and he tells the winds and waves to calm down, and it just stops. Like, you would be amazed. I would be amazed if that could happen. Like, they were in this moment that, they were going, everything was going so crazy. Their confidence in Jesus was overwhelmed by the fear of the storm. What was going on around them caused them to doubt Jesus. Now, at that point of the field trip, Jesus was trying to show them that fear doesn't have to be the boss of them. They don't have to let fear control their life. To show them that there's someone bigger than the storm that they were facing. They didn't have to worry. They didn't have to be afraid of it. So back to the conversation, right? Jesus is talking to his disciples, telling them he's going to send them out like sheep among the wolves. And Jesus follows up by saying this. He says, do not be afraid of those who can kill the body, but cannot kill your soul. In other words, if you're going to fear something, you might as well fear the right thing. A storm is not nearly as big as God. That giant storm that they were afraid of, it was not nearly as big as God. All those dangerous situations that Jesus was going to send them out into, like sheep among the wolves, they don't have to worry about those things. They don't have to be afraid, because God is bigger than their fears. God is bigger than any worry they have. It's like he's saying, guys, remember that boat ride I just took you on? That crazy one where you thought you were going to die? You had a right to be afraid, but what you didn't know is there's someone's there who can care for you, who's bigger than the storm you're facing, bigger than anything that you may have to worry about. And Jesus goes on and says this, are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall into the ground outside your Father's care. And even the very hairs on your head are all numbered. So do not be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. Jesus is saying, I'm paying attention to you. You don't have to be afraid. You're worth more than the birds around you. You don't have to be afraid. I know how many hairs are on your head. Crazy. Think about that. He knows how many hairs are on your head. I can't even count how many hairs are on my head. I'm losing a few. But right? He knows how many hairs are on your head, so you do not have to be afraid. He's reminding us of this, that you are valuable to God. God cares about you. He's close. He knows your circumstances. He cares about your personal life and what's going on. You don't have to feel alone when you're afraid, because God's there and he knows what's going on in your life. And when it comes to dealing with fear, fear is a big deal, right? Because God knows about it and he's in the middle of it with you. You're not alone in your fear. But Jesus isn't done teaching. They go on another field trip. Jesus loves field trips, all right? I love field trips too. And he's been preaching all day. He's talking to these people in the crowd, and it's starting to get late. What happens when it gets late and, it keeps going on? Maybe like my talking right now just feels like, oh, when is he going to stop, right? Does anyone here ever get hangry? Anyone? All right, you guys are a little shy today. That's okay. I get very hangry. My wife does as well. So when I'm getting hungry, I get grumpy. So the disciples were like, send the people back. We don't, don't have them stay any longer. Which sounds kind of crazy, but Jesus says, I'm going to feed everyone. Don't you worry, disciples. Because they didn't have enough food or money to do it. And this wasn't a small group of people. Think of thousands of people. Think about thousands of people in this room. And the disciples were afraid again. They're like, how am I going to make this happen? How are we going to feed all these people? And Jesus takes a small boy's lunch, passes it out to the disciples, splits it among his 12 disciples, and he feeds the entire crowd. It's amazing. If you really think about it, that's incredible. That's a miracle. But before they had the time to enjoy it, Jesus set them on another boat ride, on another field trip. Now, can you imagine being the disciples? You almost died in one storm. Then Jesus feeds all these people, and you're going to get on another boat. Wouldn't you say, Jesus, that's too soon. You just put us on a boat. But there's a plot twist to this boat ride. Jesus is not going with them. He's going to meet them on the other side. All right? So they get on the boat. They start, rowing the boat. It's getting late into the night. And, of course, what happens again? The wind and the waves start rising up again. It starts getting very violent. And this time they didn't have Jesus to rely on. So what happens? They look out into the water, and they can't believe what they see. It's remarkable. It's crazy. It's Jesus, and he's walking on the water. And Peter looks at him, and Matthew records that the disciples were terrified of this. If I saw anyone walking on the water in a big storm, I would be terrified too. But Jesus says something that really sticks out to them, and that they remember because he said it before. Jesus says, as he's walking on the water, take courage, it is I, do not be afraid. Jesus is trying to remind them of all the lessons they learned up to the field trips on this point, that they don't have to be afraid. They saw Jesus' miracles. They heard his teaching. And yet fear was still in control of them. This is their third or fourth time, and fear is still in control of their life. In fact, fear even controlled the disciples after this point. As you remember, the night Jesus was arrested, where were the disciples? They were hiding because they knew if they were close to Jesus, they would be arrested too. Then Jesus was killed and crucified. Where were the disciples? They were hiding because they were afraid. What happened the day after Jesus was buried in the tomb? The disciples were hiding in a room. But then Sunday came around, and a group of women went to Jesus' tomb and discovered that it was empty. Right? That's what we celebrate on Easter. They came back and told the disciples, and they were like, what? How did that happen? They must have stole his body. But then Jesus did something remarkable. He appeared before them. He showed them that he was alive. He was not dead. And suddenly everything that Jesus said became more real and true because they realized he really was someone who was amazing. This was the God of the universe. And everything they learned about fear made sense to them finally. This guy, Jesus, defeated death. Have you ever met anyone who has defeated death? No, no one. Jesus is the only person who has ever defeated death. So if they believe in who Jesus is, they don't have to be afraid because Jesus can take care of them. The disciples knew that this would give them boldness. The resurrection gave them boldness, gave them strength, gave them the ability to see fear in perspective. They didn't have to worry about fear anymore. Because of the resurrection, they could put their fear in this place. And they finally understood the lesson from the boat. When all the things around them seem so big and feel like it's out of control, they don't have to be afraid because Jesus is in control. Jesus is there. Jesus can handle it. That's why Jesus says, fear not, I am with you. It takes on a whole new meaning when we see that bigger picture. And we know this is true because after the resurrection, the disciples came out of hiding. And when the authorities came after the disciples, they didn't stop. They kept preaching to them because they started to live as if though fear wasn't taking control of their life anymore. They gave it up. They gave it to God. And they realized that Jesus told them to fear not, and they believed it. And they believed that not even death scared the disciples. Most of them got crucified or killed for their faith. But they didn't have to worry anymore because fear no longer controlled them. And they realized God could handle any fear that they had. And I realize fear is something we're all going to experience in our life. It makes you and I human. But this is the thing. You don't have to live like fear's in charge of your life. You don't have to let fear control you anymore. There's this guy named Peter. He's one of Jesus' closest disciples, and he was there during all these miracles. And after the resurrection, his life changed, and he became a devoted follower of Jesus, and fear no longer controlled him. So he gave some advice to some Christians about fear, and he wrote this. He says, "Cast all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you." When Peter says cast, it means in the original language to hurl, heave, and throw. Think about that. Think about throwing something, right? Get it out of here, right? It's not like, here's this. It's throw it. Get rid of it. And that's so important when we're dealing with fear. When you have fear, anxiety, or worry, you got to take it and you got to throw it at Jesus. You cannot hold on to it. This is the most important part because Peter experienced firsthand that when we throw our fears at Jesus, he cares for us. He takes care of you. And I want you to remember it this way. Because of Jesus, fear does not have to be the boss of you. So this is what I want you to do when you experience fear or when you feel like the vibe of fear is taking over your life. I want you to name whatever you're afraid of. What is that thing? Name it. I want you to write it down. Maybe you have a journal, a piece of paper. Maybe if you're like a phone person like me, you write it down in the notes in your phone. But write this down. I'm afraid of blank. I'm afraid of if this happens, then blank will happen. And put these words in front of you of what has caused you to be so afraid or worried or anxious. Then I want you to take that fear and throw it to Jesus. I want you to write it down. And I want you to write down something like this. Jesus, I'm giving you my fear of blank. Write that down. Jesus, I'm giving you my fear of blank. Talk to God. He wants to talk to you about this. Ask God to look at the stuff that you have wrote down. Ask God to remind you of what's true, that he cares for you. And that even though you don't always feel like it, that you're going to trust it. That you're going to replace your fear with trusting God. Because God can handle your fears. And we see it time and time again throughout the Bible. And then lastly, I would encourage you to talk to your small group leader about fear. Whatever your fear may be. Your small group leader is here for you. They literally show up every week because they love you. They care a lot about you. And they want to get to know what's going on in your world. They want to pray for you. And when you invite someone else into your life, you allow them to remind you of what's true, to come alongside you. So as we wrap up today, I want you to remind you that this vibe of fear does not have to control your life. It does not have to control your life. Growing up, I was one of the most fearful kids you could ever know. I literally would worry about everything. I had such bad anxiety. I was the only child. It was a mess. But being an adult now, fear does not control my life. Do I experience fear from time to time? Absolutely. But I realize God is bigger than any fear I can face, even death. I don't worry about it as much because I realize where I'm going to go after I die. Jesus defeated death, and I believe in that. And I want to invite the worship team on the stage. You can come start walking up right now. And as they come up, they're going to lead us out with a song. But as they come up, I want you to look under your seat. You're going to find a piece of paper and a pen. And it says, Jesus, I'm giving you my fear of blank. As we read with Peter earlier, and you remembered me throwing something that might have woken you up, we're supposed to throw, heave, and get rid of the fear, the anxiety, the worry in our lives. And I want to give you a chance to do that tonight. I want you to look at this sheet below you, and it says, Jesus, I'm giving you my fear of blank. I would invite you to write that one thing that comes to mind. What's that one thing that you would love to give to Jesus tonight? That one fear, that worry, that stress. That fear maybe you've been holding on to. Maybe for a couple days, maybe for a couple weeks, a couple months, or all your life. And as you write that fear down, I want you to come over there. You can see the cross in the corner there. There's a hammer and nails there. I want you to fold up your paper, grab a hammer, and nail it to the cross. I want you to do it as a symbolic act of fully giving that fear over to God. Truly trusting that Jesus is bigger than your fear. That fear no longer controls your life. That you don't have to let this vibe control your life. And that you truly trust in Jesus. You don't have to do this. It's not required for you to do this. But I want to give you the space and opportunity to do it. But personally, I know I've been struggling with a fear. Something that's been bothering me for the last couple months. And I'm ready tonight to get rid of it. I'm ready to fully give it to Jesus. Because I don't want that vibe and that fear vibe to control my life. I want to fully trust in Jesus. So I'm going to go nail this over there after we're done. So during the worship song, feel free to get up if you'd like. You can nail it to the cross. You don't have to again, but I would invite you to do that. So let me pray before we sing this last song, and you can go up and do that. So let me pray. God, I just want to thank you so much that we can know you. God, that you came down to this earth, you lived a perfect life and died on the cross so that we could have a relationship with you. God, we thank you so much that you're bigger than any fear that we face. I pray that you would give us boldness tonight to step out and take a step to trust you more, God. That, God, whatever is holding us back, that you would give it, that we would give it to you, God. That we would really consider how we can fully trust you, God. What fear is holding us back from trusting you, God. That we would evaluate and fully give that to you tonight. That we would throw it, God, and that we would leave it at the cross, knowing that you are bigger than any fear. God, I just pray for each student here tonight, God, each leader, that we would fully trust you today, God, that whatever we're facing, that we would be reminded of your love for us or your care for us, God, and your desire for us to fully trust you. Lord, we love you and praise to your name. Amen.
Hey guys, you can stand or you can sit and write down whatever you want to on that sheet of paper. It's up to you. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Strangers, neighbors, our blood is one. Children of generations, of every nation, of kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. Take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Oh, 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 oh. And Jesus, our redemption, our salvation, is in his blood. Jesus, light of heaven, friend forever, his kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. Take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Oh, 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 oh. Swing wide on your heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All his children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Swing wide on your heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. Take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Oh, 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 oh. And the bridge, swing wide, all you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All His children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus, and Jesus our redemption. Jesus, our redemption, our salvation is in His blood. And Jesus, a light of heaven, and friend forever, His kingdom come. Father, thank you for tonight, Lord. Thank you for all the fears that were just nailed to your cross. And Lord, I pray that you would just give us a strength, Lord, to just trust you with them, that we might be able to leave them there at your feet. Father, thank you for tonight. Thank you for the conversation that we're about to have. And Lord, just be with us as we leave this place. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, thank you guys. You can head to small groups.